So y'all remember the VW bus, right? Hippies made it iconic, car guys still like to make cool builds out of this vehicle, and pop culture won't let you forget about this vehicle. No matter how hard you try, I promise there's a new show or movie coming out with the VW bus, regardless of how little it makes sense. Not even in Outer Banks. That show was set in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, filmed in Charleston, South Carolina, and the first time I've ever seen a VW bus in either of these locations was the new bus on Daniel Island a couple weeks before filming this video. At this point, VAG owes Hollywood a check for the relevancy of this vehicle, because the hype behind it has allowed them to come out with a brand new VW bus called the ID Buzz. If you're watching this from Europe, you're probably like, bro, this is not news. The ID Buzz concept came out in 2017 and it's been in VW showrooms for a few years now. But if you live in the States and you don't pay attention to the international automotive industry, this ID Buzz is a totally new vehicle to you, as it just made it here last year. I've been curious and actually quite optimistic about this vehicle since I first heard of it, and McDaniel's Volkswagen here in Columbia, South Carolina gave me the keys to one of their ID Buzzes. So in this video, we're gonna go over its features, talk a little trash as usual, and take one of the representatives on a ride in the new bus just to pick his mind. Because to be honest, I like the idea of a new VW bus, but I don't understand the purpose of such a vehicle's existence in this decade. Is it a minivan? Is it an actual van? Is it just a niche nostalgic vehicle that they don't plan to sell too many of? Whatever it is, we're gonna break it down and you'll have to let me know what you think in the comments.
Hi guys, I'm Shmi and you're watching Vinstagram.
Now clearly, I'm not the target market for the Volkswagen ID Buzz, but I've always been somewhat a fan of the old VW bus. I've always liked the modularity and the utility of it, and I like how people build them out today. So I wanted to come out here to McDaniel's Volkswagen, where they provided me this ID Buzz, to go and just check it out and see what it's about. This is the first year that it's available within the States, so I thought it would be an interesting car to go and review for the channel. Let me know if you guys want to see more reviews like this, but now let's go ahead and check out the interior. Also, McDaniel's Volkswagen is going to be hosting a car show on May 10th. You can find more information about it in the description. It's mostly just going to be open to Volkswagen products, VAG subsidiaries like Porsche, Audi, Ducati, Bentley, Lamborghini, etc. I currently don't own a Volkswagen product or a VAG subsidiary product. I do accept free Porsches in case anyone at Porsche is watching. But yeah, y'all should pop out. It's gonna be a good time. I'm gonna be there. If you want more info, it's gonna be in the description. But without further ado, let's go up to McDaniel's Volkswagen and check out this new ID Buzz. Now, the reason I want to start off in the back seat is because this area of the original VW bus is part of what made it so iconic, what made it so popular to begin with. Because this back seat area, it just had so much utility and people could kind of do whatever they wanted to. If you look at the builds that are coming out of people's garages today, you'll get an idea of the depths of what you can do with this vehicle. There's so much capability. So I'm kind of curious as to whether the new ID Buzz actually offers that same utility and practicality of the old VW bus. Now, as far as interior space goes, I'll admit this is one of the more spacious interiors that I've driven in the past year, and I've driven quite a few cars in the past 365 days. You might not think that this is a whole lot of legroom, but you can back the seat up individually. So you have the driver's side 2 seats, so the center seat and the seat that is directly behind the driver's seat. You can push these back alone, and you can also move this seat back on its own as well. You couldn't really see that from the camera angle that I'm at right now, but I promise you they move back. So I have significantly more legroom, and also we can move this up as well, the driver's seat. And I'm actually gonna recline this back a little bit, get a little bit more comfortable, while I talk about the third row seats that is behind us as well. And all these fold down to give you a completely flat bottom so that you can have literally a bus load of storage, because there's just a lot of space in here. You could literally fold these down and use it as a work van. Another thing I noticed was how many compartments there are in this interior for storage. So you have this little shelf right here. You have this compartment right here. You have another shelf right here. You have this compartment right here. You then have this compartment right here, which houses your cup holders, which I think they should have just connected the entire dashboard at that point, but it's cool. It is what it is. You can put it down and there go your cup holders. Might I add, that's navy blue, so that's really weird, kind of odd that they would put that in an interior with brown leather. There's also a compartment like that on the door, on the back doors as well. So you have a compartment down here, another cup holder, then you have this rear shelf right here, and each of these shelves, including the ones in the front, have USB-C ports to charge. And then in the back, the very back, in the third row, you then have another cup holder, another compartment, and this little like slit to the side. I'm not exactly sure what you would use that for, but it's there. There's storage. One more thing I noticed with storage is that when you open up the rear compartment, right, I thought this was pretty cool. So when you open it up, you can press this button right here to make it go down, but I don't think that's necessary when you have this hoop right here. You can pull and it automatically goes down. Just a light pull. I thought that was pretty cool. Not a lot of vehicles have that. Why are the light controls on a touch panel? And that was my main gripe with some of the features in this vehicle. While I do like some of the touchscreen and touch sensitive features in this vehicle, there are some things that really should have just been left alone, including the exterior light controls. I've driven pretty much every internal combustion US market vehicle that Volkswagen has to offer over the past 10 years, except the very newest stuff. And for the most part, they have the same physical dial for light controls. It's very straightforward and it just works. I don't understand why companies feel the need to change things just for the sake of making it feel modern. It's like the entire industry has adopted this philosophy of automotive hypermodernity, if you will. And it's certainly for better or for worse. You'll see this as a recurring theme in this interior as we continue to explore this vehicle. So if you've ever been in a new Volkswagen, you'll kind of be familiar with the level of materials and level of build quality that's in here. And it's, to be honest, it's not terrible. It's not bad. It's just what you'd expect from a Volkswagen, because this is not an Audi. It's, again, a Volkswagen. But if you're familiar with modern Volkswagen interior materials and build quality, this isn't really that bad of an interior. I think it's actually a pretty good design. Obviously, like I said, certain parts that you're not really going to touch all that often are kind of plasticky, but the surfaces that you're going to touch, they are decent leather. They're decent enough. Not quite Audi, but again, for a Volkswagen, I think they're quite nice. And I've always thought that Volkswagen has kind of been slightly nicer than the rest of its segment. But despite what you think of that, I think the interior design is actually pretty damn good. It's very straightforward, a lot of straight lines, very well organized. And honestly, whatever gripes I may have with some of the materials, you kind of overlook it because of how well the interior is designed. The only thing I have a problem with is the fact that we have this gigantic iPad screen sitting on the dashboard. Like a lot of cars nowadays, this isn't just Volkswagen, and I don't think Volkswagen was the one that started this trend, but this big gigantic iPad just plopped on the dashboard. It feels like the infotainment, which is supposed to be the centerpiece of the interior, sort of feels like an afterthought. If I could change anything about the interior, I think I would put the central air vents above the screen, lower the screen down, and there's sort of a gap between the center console and the dashboard. I would just complete that with a full center console that connects to the dashboard, and then put the screen a little bit lower. The other gripe I have with the screen is the fact that there's touch displays and touch panels for every single control. So besides the buttons that open the rear doors from the front seat, which is actually kind of nice, as well as the window controls, and those aren't even fully physical, you don't really have a whole lot of physical buttons in here, not even on the steering wheel. And again, to give it credit though, these are some of the most intuitive, most responsive touch panel controls that I've ever used. Normally, the reason I have a gripe with them is because they're so unresponsive and they just don't react to your controls as fast as a regular physical button. And it seems like manufacturers just never got it down to where it could feel like and react to your touch like a physical button. But here in the ID Buzz, and I'm assuming across the entire ID line of vehicles from Volkswagen, it's not terrible. It's actually pretty good. The infotainment's actually not terrible either. I mean, it's very straightforward, it's pretty simple, and the screen is very intuitive. And that's nice because if you're gonna put things on a touch display, you make it good. There's so many bad touchscreens out there in cars nowadays. Even some of the highest end cars out there, some of the displays are just bad. I'm surprised that Volkswagen is actually outdoing some of these luxury brands, and I hope this carries over to Audi as well. But yeah, AC controls normally don't prefer to have those on a touch panel either, but these again are very intuitive. So you can turn on your AC like so, and look at how intuitive and responsive that is. That is incredible. You can't do that with a physical button unless it's like one that has like the settings really set to high as far as the sensitivity, but that's actually pretty good, as well as the volume. It's kind of exactly how you would expect it. I don't want to get copyrighted though, so I'm going to turn that down. Now, as you can hear, the AC is running. If I want to turn the AC off, there's nothing right here where you can turn it off. Look, even right here, I selected it right here, and then you go down. Look, that's the furthest you can turn it off, is down to 1. To get it to turn off, I have to go up into this menu, and then I have to go not to auxiliary climate. That's where you control it to make it come on before you get to the car and everything. I think that's pretty cool. But to get it to turn off, you have to go to climate control, and then in here, you can then go and turn the AC off. Is it gonna turn off? That's not where you turn it off. It's this right here. And there we go. Now the AC is off. But as for the touch sensitive buttons here, they're honestly quite responsive. And again, they're the best in the industry, at least so far that I've experienced. I don't like that I just had to go through a menu to turn the AC off, which is exactly what I feared with these kind of cars where you have a touch panel and a touch display for every single thing. That's why I wish there was just a little bit more physical buttons, at least just for the AC and for the volume. Everything else, I understand why there is a nice screen like this. And it is truly a nice screen. I understand why there's touch displays for the GPS. The music interface, the phone interface, because those are things that if you had buttons for every single thing like that, you're gonna have an entire dashboard full of buttons, and I think that's overdoing it. You can go to both extremes very easily. So I see why we have touch displays for certain things, but I think AC and volume just need to be on a physical button. Now, like I was saying before I had to go through the menu to turn the AC off, I actually really like the touch sensitive controls that are actually there, because unlike a lot of touch sensitive controls, there's not really anything that's gonna cue you in that you're pressing a specific button. But in this car, you do have these little notches in between the dual climate AC controls, as well as the central volume control in the front. So that's not the worst situation to be in when you have these touch sensitive controls. I actually like that. That works, it's fine. I just wish that the power button for the AC was physical, or at least one of these touch sensitive controls. There's definitely a lot of space in the front right here on this center console where they could have made the dual climate controls as well as the volume controls a little bit slimmer, so you can add a button to turn off the audio, turn on the audio, and as well as do the same thing with the AC. One thing I think is really cool about the climate system though is that it does have an auxiliary climate control, and you can kind of just make it to where it heats up or cools down before the time that you're expected to get into the car, which that's one of the pros of having an electric car, the AC being able to turn on without being reliant on the drivetrain actually moving at all. As a car enthusiast, I'm sure a lot of y'all watching can understand why there's a lot I don't like about electric cars, but admittedly, there are quite a few pros to electric cars that are literally not possible with the gas-powered vehicle. So you find me back outside on a slightly windy day again here at McDaniel's Volkswagen, where I'm gonna finally take this car for a ride. We're gonna go ahead and get in the ID Buzz, not this ID Buzz, that's a white ID Buzz, that's almost identical spec. We're gonna go ahead and get back in this black one right here that we were reviewing. It's kind of covered in pollen. As you can see, it's spring in South Carolina or anywhere right now. It's gonna be just a lot of pollen, so kind of dirty, but we're gonna be okay. Let's go ahead and get in this thing and go for a ride. Oh, and it creeps, that's nice. Yeah, that's actually quite nice. A lot of things about these electric cars is the way you just simple little things like that when you drive it, they're not exactly what you'd expect out of a gas powered car, but I like when cars creep like that instead of the, the kinetic energy recovery curve system, because it is more efficient obviously, but I think it's better, at least as far as familiarity goes, to kind of get acquainted with the car.
Yeah, what I like is that as soon as you take, because you expect, even in a gas-powered vehicle, when you take your foot off of the brake, it's going to start to roll.
Exactly.
So that's still there in the electric, where you don't feel like, oh, something's wrong. I've taken my foot off the brake, but I'm sitting still. You like that little forward creep, and then you can,
exactly. It's a lot more familiar. It's a lot more palatable to someone who's switching over from an electric, from an internal combustion vehicle.
Well, they said too that any noise that it makes has all been manufactured, because it really doesn't make any noise.
Exactly.
But they have to put something, otherwise you almost kind of go crazy. Like, is my vehicle even on? So that little, it has like a little whir to it when you drive up. Very similar to maybe like the monorail at Walt Disney or something, where it just goes.
Let people know in case there's, especially with blind people around. This is Gabe, by the way. He's the sales consultant at Volkswagen, at McDaniel's Volkswagen. And we're gonna be asking him a few questions about the vehicle today, because this is honestly quite the interesting driving experience. I don't think I've ever driven an electric vehicle that's this big before. Obviously I've driven vehicles that are way bigger than this, but all of them have been big V8s, diesels, stuff like that. But it's really interesting to be driving something that's literally built like a bus. And it really, even the way the dashboard is set up and the way the window looks out upon the road, it really does feel like you're driving a bus more so than a minivan. But it is kind of sort of for the minivan sort of market. And this is really the first electric minivan I've driven as well. I've driven a hybrid Toyota Sienna and a hybrid, what's the Honda? I forget the name of it. The Odyssey, right. Driven a hybrid Odyssey, driven a hybrid Sienna. And this is, so far, for the 30 seconds that I've been driving it, it feels nothing like it.
Volkswagen doesn't even put it in the class of a van or a minivan.
That's
They
interesting.
really have sort of classified it in a group all by itself. But you're right, most customers outside of the brand put this with an Odyssey or a Sienna or a sedan.
Right, that was my first sort of association, but I'll be honest, this is, if we're talking interior alone and and just the way it drives, this is the better car. And I think statistically this is true. It just has the most third row space. You get a ton of space when everything's folded down. It really is impressive how much space there is in here. And I mean, you should expect nothing less of something that the average customer would probably compare to a minivan, but it just feels way more spacious.
No, you're right. When you fold those seats down and the back bench down, cavernous is a good adjective.
It really is.
That. I got a little massage going right here.
Right. How do you turn on the massage seat?
Right, I'll get you taken care of.
Okay. Because this is something that I didn't even realize it had when I first started reviewing it.
Yeah, it just, it came. Oh, let's try with Ida. I'll try.
Okay.
Hello, Ida. Massage driver seat.
Sorry, I can't do that yet.
Oh. I think, do we have to be at a stop or something?
Here's an overview, pausing voice assistant.
It always does that too, where I don't use a whole lot of voice assistant stuff, so it's like, I'm accustomed when I'm at home, when I ask Alexa something,
right.
As soon as I've asked, she stops listening.
Exactly.
Once she's answered the question. Ida just keeps listening, and so as you continue to talk, you'll see she's like, trying to process.
Okay.
So she's sort of turned herself off there because I think she realized we were talking.
Got you. So it does have quite a few functions you can control through Ida though. Just not the massage, I guess, but yeah, that is nice to know that it has.
When I first turned it on, it was just there.
See, that's the thing. I've never quite been a fan of voice assistants in cars either. It seems like every time a company comes out with a new voice assistant or gesture control system and claims that it's the most intuitive or something, it just never quite measures up to what you would expect from a smartphone. And when you're spending this much money on a car and the voice assistant is a selling point, I just think that manufacturers should put a bit more time into fine-tuning that system so that it truly feels seamless.
I just think that's quite nice that it even has massage seats, because that's not
the passenger seat. I mean, normally, like, I could understand the driver's seat because you're driving for a long time. Nice to have that little lumbar support,
right?
But to have it in the passenger seat as well, it's really nice.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, and especially at the price point that it is. I'll be honest, it is kind of high for what you would expect to be competing with a minivan. I mean, it starts at $60,000 or just under, and you can spec it all the way out to above $70,000. And at first I'm like, well, why is it $70,000 fully optioned? But now that even at the spec that it is right now, and this is not fully optioned, by the way, guys, it really is like sort of a middle of the ground sort of spec. And it has massage seats, it has heated and cooled seats. The fans in the seats are blowing. Like, especially on a day like today where it's finally starting to heat up in South Carolina, it's blowing like it should be, and it feels incredible. It's not like it's just barely blowing like some of these seats are, and it honestly feels better than some of the luxury cars on the market right now.
Yeah, we're actually in the base model.
Really?
Yeah, we're in the base model, and I mean, you can see like with the interior, I mean, it's a sweet little ride.
It's pretty solid. I don't want to expect leather everything, Alcantara everything everywhere, all kinds of nice materials, because I mean, at the end of the day, it is a Volkswagen. It's sort of it's not the worst interior out there, but it's certainly not of, a Mercedes or a BMW sort of quality. But I think for what you get at this price is honestly not terrible, especially when you consider the size of the vehicle, how much space you have, the practicality. It really is pretty decent.
Yeah, we're probably experiencing the leatherette seats. As you get into the first edition, that's probably your all leather seats.
Interesting.
I'm curious where that was just because when we first turned it on, it was just there.
Maybe if we go in here.
Oh yeah, there's 3 pages of.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Ambient lighting, I didn't even realize it had ambient lighting either.
That's it, seats.
Okay.
So I'm gonna get you hooked up here. Driver. Go for about 20 minutes, full level.
You can even time it, that's crazy.
Lumbar, and different kinds. You got waves lumbar, tapping lumbar, and stretching.
I think I will take waves.
Let's go to waves. Give that a start.
Man, there we go.
I mean,
it has intensity, what? So I'm about mid-intensity right now, and it's definitely pushing my back, and it doesn't feel terrible at all.
That's right.
I'm not complaining.
I mean, this is a huge infotainment screen.
Yeah.
It's at least 12 inches, maybe even 16.
Mm-hmm.
But everything is going to be just like your phone or your tablet. You're
right.
Just, waving through
Oh, metal plate, South Carolina roads. I'm seeing we're looking at the climate control settings. I do want to mention this has 4-zone climate, so you can control the climate from the back seats, and each side has its own individual climate, as well as in the front, which I think is really cool. You don't see 4-zone climate. You see dual zone in a lot of cars, especially nowadays, but I haven't been in a car all year that's been 4-zone, and I've been in, at this point, dozens. As far as the driving experience in this vehicle, is really not terrible, and it's super quiet, super smooth. There's not a whole lot of road noise either. Now, I have to ask, because this is it's quite an obscure vehicle. It's very weird. And I've only seen one on the road. I was just in Charleston this weekend, and I finally saw an ID Buzz on the road.
Charleston's where you would see it.
Yeah. But who is the target market for this vehicle? Who is actually buying these cars? And really, what are some of the customers like that y'all have sold these vehicles to? Because I know y'all have sold quite a few units of these.
Yeah, everyone's different. There's a huge amount of nostalgia with this vehicle, and that's what you kind of see at first is folks who saw this vehicle, you know, the bus when it was in the 70s and the 80s, or they knew someone who owned one, and it's very, very similar to when Volkswagen re-released the Beetle, you know, several years ago. It's just like, it just jumps at you and grabs that.
And I remember that had a lot of different sort of nostalgic design cues in that interior as well. I remember, I didn't spend too much time in the Beetle, but I remember my mom had a loaner car because she had a Volkswagen Tiguan. We got a loaner from Big Daniel's Volkswagen, actually. She came in to get it serviced, and we got a Beetle loaner. Everything you would expect like from a Beetle, it had it. And with as far as design goes, it certainly hit that nostalgia factor. And I feel like this is doing the same thing.
Doing the same thing because they made that big front. You know, that's the thing that the bus had, is that big flat front. Right. So this got that big front.
Yeah, you're looking through a gigantic, just flat glass panel.
And even between the A-frames, you've got, like you said, it's like you're driving a bus because you're higher up and you just see the world out in front of you.
Even the seating position, you're sitting up higher than what you would be in a minivan. It really doesn't feel like you're driving a minivan. It feels like you're driving a miniature bus.
But the customers are varied. Had a couple from Puerto Rico because there's lots of Volkswagens down there, so they were already familiar with the brand. You get a lot of people who are, you know, earth conscious. They're ready to make the transition from gas to electric, and
this is the only way you can get a minivan like that right now.
That's right. And then people who just like the customization.
Minivan.
Yeah. People that like the customization, you know, there's different colors you can order it in. There's a
and
green, a cabana blue.
I do like the color combos. Yeah. They are quite a nostalgic way to go about it, because this one is all black and the other one they have in inventory right now is all white. But you can get two-tone colorways like how you did back in the day. So, you know, it'll be white on the top and whatever color on the bottom. And I think that's really cool as well. And it honestly, usually a lot of times you'll see companies try and do sort of nostalgic liveries and stuff like that, and sometimes they may not always work. But I feel like on this vehicle, especially with how well they did this car justice, it honestly looks like, in general, even without the two-tone livery, it does look like a modern Volkswagen bus. It looks like, you know, they updated the headlights, the taillights, and the shape just a little bit to sort of bring it up to date with what you'd expect out of modern design. But the two-tone does work on this because of how well it harks back to that earlier time when the first VW bus actually came out.
I had another gentleman test drive it because, like you said, he was comparing it with a minivan. He had a young child and twins on the way, so he was looking for as much space as possible. We had a grandmother down in the Orangeburg area get it because she wanted to, you know, she had a ton of grandkids and wanted to take them around town. So
yeah, this is certainly the vehicle for that.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen, so it really is. It just runs the gamut of different types of folks. You know, young families, an older grandmother, you know, retired couples. You know, just I think the big thing is the look. I mean, people stop by all the time because we just have it right there on the street. They're like,
it's certainly an attraction.
They've seen some commercials and they want to get close to it. And everyone, I think, similar to you, is very impressed with as soon as you open it up, there's just a ton of space. Like, oh yeah, this is. One guy even suggested, and I thought it was a great idea, especially with this black one that we have here, almost using it like a very luxurious valet sort of limousine type of thing, because You can get all your friends in here.
One thing I was curious about when I first saw this vehicle came out was how are people going to modify them? Because back in the day they were kind of, if people were chopping the back off and doing all kinds of stuff like that. I think it could be really interesting in the future to see, as these begin to mature and as the aftermarket begins to mature for these vehicles, what people do with these cars and modify them and build them all kinds of certain ways and do certain things with them. So that could be cool as well.
A lot of people are curious about the like the camper version. So there is a camper version that's only in Europe, but I do think there's at least one aftermarket group that will modify it. I certainly don't suggest doing any modifications because I think it tanks your
yeah, and also just because of the electric powertrain and how differently the electronics work in these, I'd sort of be scared of opening it up like one of the older ones. But
yeah. But everyone, everyone looks inside and like, oh, they wanted the seats to face each other. I'm like, well, that's just against the laws.
Hey, that's something you'll have to do sort of on your own.
Right, yeah, travel to Europe and experience.
One thing you can option that is not on this vehicle is the panoramic sunroof, which if I were to get a VW bus, I'd have to put a panoramic sunroof in there. Even if it was completely custom, that would have to be something that I do. I think that's cool that you can get that in these because, I don't know, I had a really weird dream one night, way before this car even came out, but I distinctly remember it for some reason. It was an all black VW bus and it had like a panoramic sunroof. I mean, yeah, panoramic sunroof where it kind of like, the glass kind of curved over the edges. And I always thought that was really cool. I'm like, I gotta do that at some point now.
So are you saying this was all your idea? You're talking about just accessories or adaptations, stuff like that. But you're right. I mean, if you did take this camping, you just take out those two back seats.
Yeah.
You can put a full mattress in here.
You really could. Honestly, you could lay these down and almost put a full mattress in here. And honestly, that's just how much more spacious this interior is than an actual minivan. I think there is so much more practicality, so much more utility to an interior like this than what you get out of a conventional minivan.